Hello, everybody. I bet you know who I am, or maybe you don't. If you're thinking that it could be Pastor Sean, well, there's probably only one way to find out. I mean, with this bag over my head, you might be saying it could be anybody. So I'll take that off, and let's see if I'm who you think I am. You were right. I'm Captain Crunch. All right, well, maybe I'm not Captain Crunch either. Maybe that's another mask. There we go. That's better. Actually, it's kind of warm being Captain Crunch. I knew Captain Crunch when he was only a private. Anyway, sometimes it's hard to know who somebody is, and so we sometimes have to identify ourselves. Somebody will ask you for a driver's license. So somebody could say to me, hey, I need you to prove who you are. And I could say, well, here, I have a driver's license, and it has my name on it, and it says that I weigh 250 pounds, so it's almost accurate. But you could get an idea that this is who I am. Or you might say, well, is there any identifying features? Well, on the back of my hand, you're not going to be able to see it really well in the video here, but I have a scar that runs from the bottom of this knuckle all the way down my hand because I had a cut one time when I was younger and I was working and the back of my hand got cut open. And so I had to have stitches in there, but it left a scar there. Jesus comes to the disciples and he enters the room where they're at, and not all the disciples were there, but he comes to that room and they don't recognize him. They don't know who he is. And you know why that is? It's because they thought he was dead. Jesus had died. They saw him die. They saw that he was buried in a cave. And all of a sudden, he's standing before them. And they have a hard time believing this. Well, Jesus couldn't reach in his wallet and pull out a driver's license because you didn't need one to ride a camel or a donkey or anything like that. So he didn't have one of those. And obviously he wasn't wearing a bag over his head or anything like that. But as I said, I had the scar on my hand to identify me. He had nail holes in his hands and in his feet. And he had a wound in his side where he had been stabbed by a spear. And so when the disciples saw him, he showed them his wrists. He showed them where the nails had gone through. He showed them those holes, kind of like this scar in the back of my hand. He showed them those, and when they saw it, they believed. They believed it was Jesus. They had proof. They had a driver's license, if you will. They had something that showed them for sure that this really was Jesus. Jesus is alive. And from there on, the disciples, they still had a few little challenges to face after Jesus was raised from the dead, and they had some difficulty in understanding exactly where Jesus was calling them to. But once they went out and told the whole world all about Jesus so that we would know. And we know today that Jesus is still with us. Even though when he came to the disciples, Thomas wasn't with them. So Thomas didn't see him at first. Was Jesus still resurrected? Was he still alive? Even if Thomas didn't see him, even if only the other disciples saw him, and he showed who he was and showed them the nail holes, Thomas said, well, I'm not going to believe it till I see it myself. Well, we don't have Jesus showing us the holes in his hands or in his side today, but we know Jesus is alive. There are people who don't believe. But even if somebody doesn't believe Jesus is alive, is he still alive? Of course he is. If I told you that the sky was purple with pink polka dots in it, would you believe me? Of course not. Because you've looked at the sky and you said, well, it's blue or grayish or whatever color it might be when you're watching this. But you've looked at the sky and you know it's not pink with purple polka dots or purple with pink polka dots, whichever direction it is. You've seen it and you know that. You know the truth. And you know the truth, and that is that Jesus is alive. Even though we don't get to put our fingers in the holes like Thomas could have, the disciples saw him and they verified this was Jesus risen from the dead. And we know that Jesus is risen for us and that he will be with us always to the end of the age. Amen.